Hello and welcome to Humans. I'm Ollie.
I'm Daryl.
And this is Humans Unplugged. And today we're joined by Ron Moody. Hey, Ron.
Hello, good to be here.
Good to have you, sir. So for our listeners, give us a little bit of an insight into who you are, what you do, and why you're here.
Okay, so sitting here with a rather famous name, Ron Moody, after the actor, and I currently am semi-retired. I kind of spent the first half of my career in newspapers, working my way up to general manager, managing director, which was great and thoroughly enjoyed that. But in those days, you kind of got moved on every 2 years. And so I eventually fell out with newspapers and I ended up in contact centres. And I worked with the charity sector for about 20 years in fundraising call centres and recently helpline contact centres. And then semi-retired last year and then did a little stint for an amazing charity in Bristol called the Marmalade Trust. And that finished in January, and here I am talking to you guys.
Brilliant. And that leadership journey for you, obviously, multiple decades of leadership and management experience. One of the things that we talk about in Humans is the blend of being happier in life, but also happier in business. I'm sure you've seen all of the good and all of the bad and a lot of the ugly along the way. So definitely want to pull some of that out. But
Sure.
Tell us a little bit more about your most recent leadership gig. What was your role? Where was the organisation? And how did you help it develop over time?
So most recent was a 9-month stint I did at the charity as an interim CEO. And it's really interesting because I used to say to people that I know when they ask you what you did, I'm currently interim CEO at Marmalade Trust. Oh, you're on trial? No. Well, interim normally means they're not quite sure if you're good enough, and if you behave and you do a good job, you get the full title. I said, no. This is interim, as in I'm helping them grow, and then I fully intend to move on. So that leadership role was really good because I could take everything that I've learned and help a really small organisation start to scale up. And prior to that, I did an MBO at a contact centre in Wales and ran that, scaled it up. Over 4 years, we tripled the size of the organisation. Yeah. And that was quite a challenge. Very enjoyable, but really took its toll on me personally. Yeah.
And tell us some more about that scaling journey then. How many staff are we talking about? What was the size of the organisation?
Well, when I did the MBO, there were 140 staff, and it's quite daunting when you do something like that because you suddenly realise you're responsible for 140 family incomes, and the scale magnitude of that. So I remember the first night we'd done the MBO, and that took about 6 months to raise the finance and persuade people that we could do it. And I remember going to bed that night, hitting the pillow and thinking, what the have I done? I'd borrowed millions of pounds from banks and various places, bought this organisation, got the management team together, and then I thought, I'm CEO of it. I'm responsible now for whether this company goes down, plateaus, or grows. And luckily, we grew. And I think when we sold the organisation, there were about 450 people. So we'd really created meaningful jobs because contact centres were full, some years back, full of temporary workers, 0-hour contracts. Well, we didn't do any of that. I don't believe in any of that. These were proper employed on permanent contracts so people could plan their lives. Yeah. It's part of a set of values, I think, that business leaders ought to be able to list down and say, we believe in that and we're going to stick to that. So no matter what client contracts come and go, people that join this organisation are going to know that they've got a wage coming in every month. They can plan they can apply for loans and mortgages, and they can build their lives. So yeah, it was quite daunting. But I woke up the next morning, thought, right, let's go in. And I got the team together at 8:30 every morning for the first year, where we just sound checked ourselves, made sure we were doing the right job. And it was great, good fun.
Yeah, good. And at what point in that journey did you decide that you were going to be CEO? Was that an executive decision? Did you talk about that? Were you the natural fit? Did you see yourself as playing that role?
I saw myself as an equal to there were 4 of us in the MBO. And I remember every Monday night we'd go to the pub and we'd write our business plan. And I remember at the start, getting their buy-in was really going to be important. So I just put it on the table. What role do you believe you can add the most value? Not what you want, but where do you think you could add the most value?
Yeah.
And there was a natural, I'm technology, I'm sales and marketing, I'm operations. I said, well, nobody's putting their hat in the ring for CEO. And I said, okay, I'll do CEO if you want me to. If you want to do it, I'll support you. And everybody said, you be the CEO. And suddenly realize your head's on the block. You're the first to go if the company doesn't succeed. And I accepted that. But I did say, we're all equals in this MBO. We're just agreeing to take a particular title and do the responsibility of that role. Nobody's better than anybody else. And we've got to support each other. And that's kind of how we went through life.
So it's, if you look at your career that you've talked about, you've got, you're working with people, lots and lots and lots and lots of people, and then you retire or semi-retire. So you come out. What do you miss about the day-to-day, the hustle and the bustle of being surrounded by so many people?
I think I've always been a people person.
Yeah.
And I've always believed that people can achieve amazing things if you give them the freedom to do that, if you allow them to make mistakes and learn from those. Yeah. And I think the greatest pleasure I got, I'm sales marketing background, so I used to love the thrill of the chase, the pitch. But my greatest pleasure came from watching people develop. The people that were doing that role, a year later they've grown, and I love the fact that quite a number of people have moved on and gone to work for other organizations and now got big jobs, and you kind of think I was part of the journey that helped them do that. So the thing I missed when I semi-retired was actually seeing the fruits of people develop. That was hard.
Yeah. So obviously, you've got like this journey of working in newspapers and media, you've got the big call center and things like that. What do you think's changed or changed the most in that journey? Because obviously media and newspapers, we know we had the internet and stuff like that, and now call centers are talking about AI, answering phone calls. For you, what's been the biggest change in that world?
I think the biggest change has been moving away from human contact. So you talk about, newspapers and media, it's all self-serve, it's all digital. And you talk about call centers, and it takes you forever to get through to a human being now.
Yeah.
AI has its place, technology has its place. If I just want some information and I ring a call center helpline and I can get that information like that from a chatbot, I really don't mind. I'm quite relaxed about that. But if I want to talk to somebody because I'm concerned or I don't understand something, I want to talk to somebody. I don't want to have to keep repeating to a chatbot or an AI that kind of doesn't quite understand. So I think the technology's come on leaps and bounds. And I think organizations that recognize there's an information requirement and there's an emotional requirement. And if they can keep those separate and rapidly separate, so you can get through to somebody when you need to, I think that's the biggest change that I've seen.
Yeah, because talking to a human is almost like the last button.
A
whole load of buttons. You're like, you keep going, and then you finally get there. But it takes a long time to get to a human.
It can do. It can be really, really frustrating.
Yeah.
So you rephrase the question. and it still comes back with the same, and you kind of think, how do I get over this? How do I get by this? You know, but yeah, that's the biggest change I think I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah, you talked about how important those human relationships and interactions are. We talk quite a lot about becoming happier, healthier, smarter and kinder, and this idea that lots of people challenge or move towards the financial wealth. And actually what we tend to see is the happiness goes because their relationships are now struggling. Their health goes because they're now not going to the gym, they're not prioritizing themselves. Their intelligence goes because now there's the inner critic and the imposter syndrome and all of that sort of stuff. And then being kind to yourself and others starts to become more difficult. So when you think about the reality that you've been through, you know, from 100 staff to 400 staff, how did you keep yourself focused and on track in terms of looking after yourself? Did you manage to do that? You know, accidental CEO, if you like, challenge that many of us face.
Probably not as well as I could have or should have. I think you've got to accept as a CEO of a company that's got responsibility for people's welfare and lives and livelihoods. You can't play at it. You know, you do end up putting the hours in, I'm afraid. But I've been really lucky over the years. I've always made sure I've had a really good mentor in every role that I've done. And one of my mentors many years ago gave me some real wisdom and said, you know, take half a day or take a day every month and just go somewhere, go to this coast, go up a mountain, do something where it's just you and switch off from the day to day. So I did that, and it's amazing how you reflect and you come up with new ideas. You don't intend to be thinking about work, but you actually come up with initiatives and ideas, and I come away from those days refreshed. I used to go quite regular to the Brecon Beacons Mountain Centre. Peace, tranquility up there is unbelievable, and you really get to reflect, and I think that's really important, because you challenge yourself. What am I doing really well? What should I be doing? How do I develop everybody? Because one of the lessons I learned quite early was that I tended to focus on those that focused on me. So you might call it favoritism. You know, I liked Mary and I liked Peter, but I didn't like John and I didn't like Beth. And you kind of, when you challenge yourself to think about that, it was because Mary and Peter used to come to me and come up with ideas and be kind of like-minded. So you'd lean towards them. And the more introvert ones, you know, the Beths and whatever, you kind of, because they're not knocking on your door, you kind of leave them. So I took time to go and talk to them. And then you find they've got some amazing ideas. They're just not extroverts. They're not going to come to you. So I think as a leader, it's really important to try and get that balance and not focus on the favourites.
Yeah, I love that. And you talked in there as well about the importance of mentorship. You know, we work with lots of business owners that don't have a coach, don't have a mentor, and they're trying to, you know, make the way across the startup to scale up gap. How important do you see mentoring, and what advice would you give to those that don't have one?
But first of all, get one. It's no shame. And I've had some brilliant, apart from one, that was you, Ollie. I've had some great mentors in each role. Reflecting back, I think advice I would give is be more open and honest with your mentor. I did tend to keep stuff back for fear that the mentor might, you know, mention it to the chairman of the company or something like that. Well, the mentor's there for you as an individual, and it's there for you to be able to offload your fears. It's really lonely as a CEO, and therefore I think it's vital that you offload your fears and you talk about them, and that's what the mentor is there to do. Yes, to advise and to challenge and coach, but it's somebody to talk to on a level that's different from talking to the board or the chairman. So I think, get a mentor and be honest, be really honest with them.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember you saying to me once how important it was to have, you know, those internal mentors that get the organizational context and understand, you know, where you are and how you're developing, and some of those layers, but also having that external mentor, somebody that doesn't understand all of that can just be an honest sounding board. So how many mentors is the right number of mentors? Is it one? Is it three? Is it a combination?
I suggest it's one. It could be more. If you want mentoring in a particular subject, I don't think that's mentoring. I think that's tuition. Okay. So, if you're poor at finance, you might be tutored by an outside person on finance, but that's not mentoring. Mentoring's about you and how you feel and how you think you're coping and what you need to change to be a better version of yourself as a leader. So I've stuck to having one mentor in each role that I've done. It doesn't mean you have to have the same mentor. I did 8 years at Connect Assist, the charity helpline, and I had 3 mentors during that time. So
you talked about the organisation scaling up to say 400 odd people. How do you keep 400 people happy?
There were a set of guiding principles and a set of values that as an MBO team we put down on paper and we kept to them. It's things like look after your clients, look after your employees, have board representation from the very shop floor. Look after your suppliers, pay your suppliers on time, pay your taxes, all these principles that we had. And one of them was make sure you're open and honest, as best you can be, with everybody. So, I did a number of things. Induction, everybody that joined the organisation met me in person for a 1-hour induction, so I could talk to them about what we believed in, what our values were, what we were trying to achieve. It doesn't mean everybody lands on the same page, but at least you've given them the opportunity to understand. And very often you want to do things for people, but you can't always afford them in business. So there's a difference between what you'd like to do and what you can afford to do. So I made sure that we had community meetings so I could share the progress that we were doing, how we were doing financially, because it's important. They don't want to go home fearing you're going to go bust. So reassuring them on that front, but then telling them what we'd like to do and what phasing we think is a priority. We also ran an employee benefit trust, and that to me was crucial. I don't understand why more companies don't do that. We took a percentage of our profits each year, put it into the trust that's then shared out amongst everybody. So everybody feels part of the success story. As directors, we didn't take any dividends. We reinvested the profits back into growth. And I think that, to triple a company in 4 years, turnover, bottom line, margins, number of people, you don't do that by skimming off the top. You do that by reinvesting. So that's what we did. So the more we made, the more that went into the employee benefit trust, the bigger the payout for everybody. So I think there are many ways of looking after people, but listening and talking and sharing, I think, are the 3 big things that you can do.
Obviously you're talking about being in the call centre, that's what we visualise. We're talking about the last but one role. What happened with remote working and stuff? Did that creep into the business then, or was it no, everyone's in the office? Because that was the big shift from COVID, where everyone trying to get them back all into the office. And I guess with 400 people, they've all got an opinion in how they would want to work, whereas before you would dictate, this is how we work.
Interesting. Before COVID came along, we'd already set the company. We had a brilliant technology director as part of the MBO, and he convinced us all that we should all have laptops. I mean, this is back in 2017. We should all have laptops, and we should all have the ability, everything was in the cloud, and we should all have the ability to work from home. So we did, we tested it. Most people came in the office, but we'd do test runs, and that paid its weight in gold, because in, I think it was 2018, we had the Beast from the East. And the call centre where we were located, there were 3 call centres on this business park in Nangara, completely wiped out. You couldn't get near them for snow. But that was fine. Everybody just worked from home because it's all in the cloud. We never lost a day.
Yeah.
And then I think we had floods, South Wales,
Yeah.
same again. So when COVID came, it was just normal to us. We partly worked from home, we partly worked from the office. It was absolutely fine. And I talked to all of our clients and prospects who were scratching around trying to get hold of laptops so that people could work from home and set up networks. And I kind of thought we were really lucky. He's visionary, this IT head. So yeah, working from home. So hybrid working has always been part of the model.
So going for, then so later on, then that became the rhythm, that there was.
Yeah, it became the norm. First of all, you've got to be able to work from home.
Yeah.
In a secure environment. So if you're
Yeah.
dealing with charity helplines, there can be some very emotive calls. So you've got to have a private space at home. So provided you could do that and you were happy to work from home, we do a hybrid model. Some people don't like working from home or can't work from home if they're in shared houses.
Yeah, of course.
So they could work in the office all the time. Other people wanted to work from home all the time, and that's fine, but we'd bring them in every now and then for team bonding. So I think there was no one rule fits everybody. Yeah. It's what works for you to get the very best out of you. And I don't care whether somebody works from home, they work from the office, as long as they're enjoying coming to work.
Yeah.
I've always believed, and I've always experienced wanting to get out of bed in the morning, wanting to go to work or work from home, wanting to achieve whatever it is, whatever the goals you've set yourself.
Yeah.
And so I believe in creating the environment where people can thrive. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it seemed to work.
Yeah.
You've talked about that kind of business resilience in that situation. One of the things that we're seeing as people are trying to, overcome that startup to scale up gap, as the organization changes and the infrastructure changes, the culture starts to change. So has that journey taught you anything about cultural resilience? How do you maintain a great culture during a period of change where people are working in different ways?
I think culture is probably one of the most important ingredients in the pot. And as a leader, I think one of the things I probably learned at the tail end to deal with this, but one of the things that really frustrated me was that this is the culture I want, this is the culture we're setting, but not everybody bought into it. And I couldn't understand that. Why isn't everybody believing in what I believe in? Why hasn't everybody got the drive that I've got? And then you realise that actually it's not for everybody. Some people just want to come, do the job, go home, end of. And that's fine. Not everybody wants to be a general. I could never understand that in my early career. So I think I learned later in life that actually individuals are individuals. Yes, it's part of a collective team, but individuals are individuals. And true successive leaders are the ones that identify the buttons to press individually, as well as collectively, because all you want, people don't come to work to do a bad job. They come to work to do a good job.
Yeah.
So all you want to do is to find the best way and the best methodology for them to thrive, to be the best version of themselves that they want to be.
Yeah. And how did you go about building a culture? Obviously, I've got a little bit of inside knowledge. I know some of the things you did, but for those that are, new to leadership, new to organizational development, building those teams, there's a lot out there at the moment around, the access to talent and finding the right people with the right ethos. What are the tips that you'd provide for building a culture? If you're starting from a blank piece of paper, what are the first things on that list for you now?
I think when I reflect back, when we first did the MBO, we were, I talked earlier about setting a set of values and writing those down and keeping to those. Make sure you share those. So I would do that during induction. I'd do it during the community meetings. I'd do it when I was talking to people individually, not in a lecturing way, just in a sharing way. And we, every morning I used to get up and I used to look at those 10 sets of values that we'd written down, think, what am I going to do today that is going to add value to those? And the big lesson, what we didn't want to do was boom or bust. We didn't want to accelerate at 100 miles an hour. So, everybody shared the same vision that if you do today what you did yesterday, but you just do it a little bit better, and tomorrow you do what you do today, but just a little bit better, we'll move forward every day. And if we do that over the course of a year, look how far we get. So I made sure everybody understood that that was the goal. We didn't want massive growth. We wanted sustainable growth.
Yeah.
And that was important to me. And then we shared, you got your sales team out there running around with a big pipeline and salespeople being salespeople. There's the pipeline value. What I didn't allow the company to do was to spend money investing based on the pipeline. You only invest based on your contracted. And we had a really good, you look after your customers, you had a really good contract renewal rate. It's over 90%. So if you maintain your customers and your salespeople do bring more business in, growth.
Yeah.
If you grow, then you actually create meaningful jobs. And it was part of our board mantra to create meaningful jobs, not just to make profit. Of course you want to make profit because you want to reinvest. It wasn't profit for wealth because we didn't take dividends, we reinvested. But we wanted to create meaningful jobs. So, when we got to 450 people, I sat there and I said, this is great. We're doing exactly what we wanted to do. And that was really, really important to us. And the other thing, I think I'd learned from previous boards I'd been on, I'd observed that most companies never realise their full potential because of infighting, politics in the boardroom. And you couldn't understand some of the rationale. Why are you voting for that? That's not going to help the company. It's because they wanted to play off this person they'd got a grudge against. So when I put the board together after the MBO, it was a big board. We got 5 executives and 4 non-executives on the board, including a non-exec chair. Yeah. And I said to each as they joined the board, what we won't do is talk about politics, fighting, whatever. You can only stay on this board if you will focus on growth of the company. And we made sure that there was never any falling out. All the agendas were focused on growth, creating jobs, expanding the business, and it worked. It was quite hard at times with 9 people, but we did it. Kept the board focused so that there was no infighting, and that allowed the company itself to realise much more potential.
Yeah, good. And there's a number of things that you've mentioned there that we see people doing later into their business journey, setting their values years into the journey, or having that conversation at board level around the values of the board and the operating system years into the journey. So do you see those as foundational pieces that people should be doing on day one?
Yeah, I think so. They should form part of your plan. I've done, since we sold the company and I semi-retired, I've done some coaching for a few different kind of entrepreneurs trying to build businesses. And the first thing I do is look at the business plan. It's great. There's the finance forecast. There's the rationale for the sales. This is what the markets we're going to go for. And not one of them had any kind of foundational values in them. So coaching to help them understand that actually there's a set of principles. And if you stick to those, you'll do well.
Yeah, good.
So obviously, how did you know it was time, to call time on the journey?
Oh, yeah, well...
How did you get to that point?
Did I call time? Did they call time? I think it was a mutual alarm clock. So we sold the company, because on the non-executive directors, we'd got the 2 founders, which was great for them because they were retired, but they could still keep their eye on the business. Wasn't a cliff edge drop for them, which was great. But there comes a time where they're probably visiting the doctor more than the boardroom. So you kind of think, okay, it's time for them to realise their retirement value.
Yeah.
So, 4 years of intense growth, we decided to sell the company. And so, you know, we appointed a mergers and acquisition company, brilliant company in Reading, and they told us how to prepare. So we got this box, we put the company in it, we tied a beautiful pink ribbon around it, and I thought we'd take it to market. Okay. It's a bit like selling your house. You know, you get somebody puts a bid in, you go, oh, somebody wants to buy us. Great. You know, do we like it? You get two, you kind of go, wow, which one do we think is better? We had 13 bids for the company, and we thought, bloody hell, how do you sort that out, you know? So, and they're all structured differently, but in the end, what we didn't want was to sell to anybody that was going to asset strip.
Yeah.
Sell to anybody that was going to sweat the asset and resell it on in 4 years' time, just to make some shareholder value somewhere. Yeah. So we ended up selling to an organization in New York, worldwide company, that we believed had got similar values to ours, because that way the heritage of the company could carry on, and all those jobs could carry on and be secure. And you know, so I ended up working for that organization, corporate, for 2 years, and that was a really interesting period, because when you sell a company, like when you buy anything, it comes with warranties.
Yeah.
So you don't realize. So there you go. There's all these warranties. Oh, right. Okay. And 2-year warranties. So I thought, I don't want to leave for the next 2 years, because I want to protect those warranties. I want to make sure that we don't do anything wrong, illegal, clients sue us or anything.
Yeah.
So I stayed on for 2 years. I said, oh, I'm not a corporate guy. I don't like corporate. You know, it's just too big for me. There's too many meetings. It's too slow to react. I'm an entrepreneurial guy, so I hated it. So after 2 years, I think I was ready to go, and I think they sensed I was ready to go. So, you know, handed it off, warranties ticked. So I was very, very happy, mutually, to go.
Yeah.
So,
But do you feel because often what gets lost in translation, that during the merger, if you like, there's that, or the acquisition, there's the values thing where they say the right things, and then actually it happens. Do you think that you managed to maintain the transition? Because that's often one of the hardest things to do, that, you know, to keep that they feel everybody's still on the same mission. It's just got different owners.
Yeah, I think so. I think it takes time. There's an osmosis, isn't there? You know, we did our homework on them as much as they did their homework on us. And, you know, I could talk about all the due diligence you have to do when you're selling a company, and all the data that you have to get ready. It takes forever, and it's 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know, non-stop for 6 months. But we also did our homework on them, and we felt, you know, we looked at their staff profiles, we looked at their reviews online, we looked at what the programs were. So we felt it was a reasonable gamble that their values were true.
Yeah.
They're always going to be different. It's a global organization. They're going to be dictated by New York. But what I was really pleased about was they bring added value, extra benefits. You know, I talked earlier about things you'd like to do versus things you could afford to do. Yeah. So, you know, we wanted to give our employees much more private medical cover, for example. We just couldn't afford to do it. So when you become part of a corporate, these sorts of benefits are there.
Yeah.
So, you know, holiday entitlements, etc., all the benefits that you would want to give out were all there. So I was really pleased about that. Of course, some things change, and of course it's frustrating, the delayed decision making, but that's part of a big, you know, worldwide corporate company, and you kind of have to accept that. And I said to lots of people afterwards, said, you know, look for the good. There's always a golden nugget everywhere you go, no matter what you do in life. So look for the good things of this new company and hold on and focus. Don't look for the bad and whinge about those.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that quite a lot within some of the coaching that we do, which is that the world feels like quite a difficult place at the moment. And if you listen to media and watch the news, there is a negative narrative. And we're seeing that culturally, that some of that negative narrative then gets carried into an organisation. And like you say, on the other side of that are some really wonderful parts of working in a certain place with the types of people that you work with. So thinking about the journey you've been on, you hinted that leadership can be a lonely place. You also hinted that perhaps as a leader you could have looked after yourself a little bit better. Tell us a little bit more about the reality of leadership and dealing with those multiple priorities and the organisational growth. What is it you wish you would have done differently for yourself as a leader?
I think I wish Dad had taken a little bit more time out, not only for me, but for the family as well. When we did the MBO, I remember sitting, it's really important you get your partner on board.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it on your own. And I remember sitting down with my wife, and I thought, right, okay, I'm going to do this MBO, need your support. Let me paint you a picture of life in 4 or 5 years' time. We had a 5-year exit plan, so let me paint you a picture of life in 5 years' time. Here's the luxury Caribbean holiday. Here's your brand new car. Here's the house. Here's whatever. So that she knew there were some rewards going to come at the end of it.
Yeah.
But I was very upfront and honest that there's going to be long hours and working weekends and being called out at 3 o'clock in the morning because it was a 24/7 operation. So if something went wrong at 3 o'clock in the morning, ultimately the buck stops with you, and you have to get up, you have to get in your car, and you have to drive to the call centre and sort it out. No matter what it was. We had a fire once, so right, okay, you need to get there and make sure everything's okay. I think I wished I'd had taken a little bit more time out, because we quadrupled the company bottom line, we tripled the top line. Does it make any difference if you only do 3.5 times instead of 4 times? So maybe I could have slowed down a little for my own mental health. There were times, incredible imposter syndrome on steroids, I think, at times. What am I doing? I always felt in life that I was never quite good enough. Every time a company makes you redundant, you think, I'm a failure. Well, you're not. You're just different to the structure that they want to do. So, when I left this corporate after 2 years, I could have sat there and thought, what, I'm a failure. I was just being honest with myself. Corporate life doesn't suit me. It suits some people, but not me.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneurial guy. When I walked through the call centre and Mary said, hey, Ron, I've got an idea, I'd go, what's that? She'd say, well, let's give it a go then, Mary, and see what happens. Yeah. What's the worst that can happen? Yeah. Whereas when you're in corporate life, Mary says, Ron, I've got an idea. Right, what's that? Okay, I'll get back to you. And you report it to your regional director, who reports it to head office, it goes up, it goes across to America, it comes back down. It comes back up. 6 months later, after 16,000 questions, you kind of go, hey, Mary. Oh, Mary's left. Okay. So it just didn't suit me, corporate life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and you just mentioned in there as well, you've performed an MBO, you've grown the company significantly, you've exited, and you've still sat there with a little bit of imposter syndrome because of the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Some people say, oh, you're an entrepreneur, Ron. I don't know if I am or I'm not. I'm not. I would be no good at starting a business.
Yeah.
Having that idea and having the balls to actually go.
Yeah.
But I'm really good at picking it up and growing it, but only to a certain point. And then when it gets too big, it's down to others, I think. So I know my sweet spot. So I didn't feel imposter syndrome too bad when I exited. And opportunities come along, like they did with Marmalade Trust, where I could bring some of my knowledge and experience to help a small organisation. I think that's the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, and I love that idea of leadership in context. This idea that you can be a great leader for the right time and the right context, but actually acknowledging when it's not your time or context is really, really important. We see lots of brilliant leaders that are able to bring an organisation so far, and they don't quite acknowledge that the next part of the journey isn't within that skill set or energy, and the importance for that kind of transition. So in terms of developing as a leader, obviously you had to do it quite heavily on the job. and figure things out as you went. But was there anything in terms of professional development, learning, knowledge, acquisition that you purposefully and intentionally went after?
Yeah, I spent an awful lot of my time and energy reading and studying other entrepreneurs, what they learned, because there are so many lessons. There's so many great things that you can do, but there are if people are honest, there's so many great lessons that you can glean. And I think, nobody has all the wisdom. So why not pick other people's wisdom? So I'd read books from other entrepreneurs, and I'd do studies. And interestingly, because we're in Wales and most of the charities that we were selling to were in London, I'd spend an awful long time on the train going back and forth. And when you run a small company, you're mindful of costs. So I only used to get the Super Saver tickets. So I'd end up, back at Paddington at 5:00. I've now got 3 hours before the Super Saver kicks in. So I'd sit there, have a coffee on the laptop, and I'd read annual reports at Companies House of lots of other companies, because the opening remarks from the CEO and the chairman on what's gone well, what their challenges have been, what their strategy is, you can pick out golden nuggets from everything. So I didn't used to sit and play games like I saw lots of business people doing on the train. I'd sit and read annual reports. It was great.
Did you find it then? Was that hard to switch off? Did you ever? You mentioned there's your family and the roles there, but did you find, because you got so many people that you're responsible for, hard to just
I did.
undone?
I did, and I think that's probably a piece of advice I would give out to anybody running a company now. Make sure you know how to leave it at the door when it's needed. Of course, you've got to take it home. You're a business leader. The buck stops with you. But knowing when to switch off and how to switch off, I think, is really important. I didn't do that very well. And yet, ironically, we ran training courses for our employees on how to switch off, so that they didn't go home with the stress and worries of some of the calls that they'd taken that day. And we teach them that actually it's really important to be able to come back and help somebody else the next day. And I just, didn't practice what I preached.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We're kind of working with the idea at the moment that taking a holiday is a strategic advantage. To what extent do you agree with that?
I would agree. Pretty ironic, but my holidays, I used to spend going to Florida hurricane chasing. So that's hardly a switch off. That's quite stressful. But yeah, I think holiday time is really important. I didn't take all the holidays I should have done, because having empowered people to make decisions themselves in the organisation, why didn't I take more time out for myself? But I'm all right. I survived.
What about? Sorry, go on. Yeah. What about the rest of the family? So obviously you've changed. Your role's changed now. How's the rest of the family adjusting to the new Ron? Ron's around a bit more. Is it like, will Ron go out and do something else, or is he, is he still?
No, they fully expect me to go back to work.
Right.
And I don't know what I'll do. I'm not a carpet and slippers guy, so I won't be sitting at home.
Yeah.
But there's only so many jobs you could do in the garden and in the house. So I'm involved in a couple of networks in South Wales, and there's one or two people who kind of reaching out, inquiring whether I can help them grow. So I'll end up doing some kind of non-executive or mentoring or interim role.
Yeah.
I don't know what it'll be. That's the exciting thing. I'm not chasing. I'll see what opportunities
comes up.
Knock on the door. But I think, if you accumulate knowledge and wisdom, you've made the mistakes. So why shouldn't you help somebody else avoid those? And I think that's the greatest gift I can give now at this stage in my life.
Yeah, we talk to lots of leaders that almost see that ability to give back as something they do in the future when they feel like they're successful. And we're trying to encourage people to start giving back earlier in that journey. You know, if you're one step in front of somebody, then you can pave the way for somebody else's success. So is that kind of ability to give back and be kind of something you wish you'd done externally earlier in your journey?
Possibly. I think that the difference for me is working with the charity sector for 20 years. I've been giving back for 20 years. You know, I've done all the charity events, you know, run up mountains, I've done all sorts as a way, and volunteered as a way of giving back to that sector, because I think it's been very good for me. So yeah, I think there's always an element of non-greed, of giving back in some way, shape or form. It doesn't have to be to the charity sector, to other businesses or to the community. So I've been really fortunate that's happened for me.
Good. Yeah, I mean, we talk about, you know, impact. If you look back now, because you've had a long, varied career, what do you think your impact is that you've left in the world of work, that you could say, you know, as you reflect, you know, what have you given? I mean, you touched on the charity and stuff like that. What do you think, if you could sum up, you know, a sentence of the impact that you've led, what would you say it would be?
Helping others achieve their potential. And I'm saying that because I've got quite a number of people who message me quite regular. You know, they're CEOs of companies, some in Australia, some in London, some in the US, who say, I'm here because of what you taught me. I didn't teach them anything, I allowed them to learn. That's the difference. And they got, you know, somebody will message and say, I did this the other day, and I always remember you encouraging me to do that for the first time. So I think my impact is helping, that my greatest impact that I'm more proud of anything is helping others to achieve whatever it is they've achieved.
Yeah, I really like as well that kind of willingness to learn. You know, we can of course go on all of these programs and read all these books and, you know, think about how we're growing and developing, but actually that willingness to learn underpins all of that. And obviously, having observed you over part of that career, that willingness to learn that you've had, that ability to go to something and find that golden nugget and be willing to look for it, but also importantly willing to hear it. See lots of leaders with a little bit of a fixed mindset, unsure of what they should be learning, and then not applying very much of it. How did you find that balance between learning stuff and then applying it? Is there any tools or techniques that you had that helped you to take those golden nuggets and do something useful with them?
Yeah, I think no matter what it was, even you know, I'd been on a finance course, just didn't, you know, I was pretty good at company finance. I knew the basics. You know, wasn't a penny movement in the balance sheet that I couldn't spot. But when it comes to like macro, micro economics out there, and I did this course, I was like, oh, God, this is dishwater. And but there were still golden nuggets, and if you look for them, and then I used to take them back and I used to share them with the team, because you used to meet at 8:30 every morning just to sound check ourselves and make sure we're all okay. So I'd share what I'd learned, what I've observed. So those golden nuggets, I didn't keep to myself. That was fundamental. That was really important, because I couldn't necessarily nurture them. I knew they were great, but I couldn't necessarily nurture them myself. You don't have all the answers. Nobody's got a monopoly on creativity. And it could be one of the other guys had come forward and go, you know, you mentioned last week, Ron, this. I've had this idea. And that's, so I think, you know, whatever you're going to learn in life, share with your team. No matter what that team looks like, share with your mentor. Because collectively you can achieve great things. Individually, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, is there any like, with all that experience and all that knowledge you'll give to a business that's maybe in the early stages starting to grow, is there any advice you could give them, you know, from all your insights and all your years knowledge, some fundamental things that you said if you had your time again you might do it differently? Is there any principles you could give somebody now so they don't have to do it differently in the future?
There's lots of things I think I've learned along the way.
Yeah.
You know, I've held on to weak people too long, and good people kind of get turned off because they see you supporting weak people. So I've been too slow at that at times. I think I would say to anybody trying to grow a company, keep solidly focused on prospecting and nurturing those prospects to clients. No matter how long it takes, have a good, strong pipeline and don't let anything else distract you from that.
Yeah.
And employ people. I used to profile people because I was trained in personality profiling, so I used to profile the kind of more important roles.
Yeah.
And I think that served me well because I would put round people in round holes and square people in square holes, as opposed to just accepting what they told you. Some people are great at interviews, some people aren't. And if you profile people, you can actually get underneath and you can understand them. You kind of go, that's not the role for you, but I've got this role for you. Yeah. They'll thrive if you get the people in the right roles and you support them and you listen to them and get out their way, allow them to grow.
Yeah.
That's the best advice I think I can give to anybody looking to scale up a company. Concentrate on your people, concentrate on your customers, concentrate on your prospects.
Excellent. Okay.
And what's the best bit of leadership advice that somebody gave you? What's the thing that changed the way you were thinking, leading, operating, and ended up helping you to scale an organisation?
The best piece of advice came from one of my mentors, a professor. And I remember I'd had a particularly torrid board meeting. I think the founders were getting a little bit agitated with the growth rate. Phenomenal growth rate, But, and I remember going to see the mentor and I said, I'm just not fast enough to react in the boardroom when they fire questions at me. He said, no, it's the opposite, Ron. Take a deep breath. Silence is golden. Think about your answer. Deliver it calmly. And I think that was probably the best piece of advice, because sometimes I do open my mouth before my brain's finished thinking it through.
Brilliant. Well, look, Ron, thank you very much for your time and insight. I'm sure our listeners will have taken loads from it. You've talked in there about developing wealth and supporting your team through financial support over time, investing in the organisation, investing in the team from a leadership perspective. You've also talked about the wealth of investing in people, mentoring, and thinking about how you develop your knowledge and look for those golden nuggets. And the challenges that we see leaders facing at the moment, you've been there, you've seen it, you've got the scars, and we can only implore that our listeners listen to some of that advice and change some of their actions and behaviours as a result. So thank you very much for sharing. Thank you for helping others to become happier, healthier, smarter and kinder. And we wish you the best in whatever you do in your next entrepreneurial endeavours, which we're sure there'll be many of. So
that's cool.
Thank you very much.
More than welcome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you for watching Humans Unplugged. We hope that this conversation's helped you to become happier, healthier, smarter and kinder. And we'd love to continue to support you on your journey. So please make sure you click subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you soon.